My name's Anne Rowe from SCVO. I'm the Head of Communications and Memberships. We're all here today because we're very excited and looking forward to learning about making films using something that we've all got at our fingertips, our mobile phones. Also, just to say, we will struggle, by which I mean we won't be able to answer questions about your technology. There's maybe just too many mobile phones out there in different settings. So what we'll focus on today are the skills and the techniques. And what you'll be able to do after the session is spend a wee bit more time yourself with your mobile phone and work out how to do it, particularly using your technology. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our speakers for today. We've got professional filmmakers, Vilta and Claire from Media Co-op, and we've also got James from SCVO. As well as our professionals, we've got amateur filmmakers with us too. We've got Jill from Helensburgh Community Hub, and Lindsay from Dates and Mates. So all our speakers will be sharing their experience with you today, and I really do hope you enjoy it. I'm going to pass across now to Claire, who's going to kick things off.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoy this session. First of all, what is Mojo? Well, Mojo is simply short for mobile journalism and is simply a way of using what you already have in your pocket, your mobile phone, to tell a story. So you don't always need to have a big camera crew to make videos with impact. Last summer, we had the pleasure of delivering Mojo training for a number of different essential sector organizations so they could learn how to use video to tell their stories. So to give you some inspiration, we're going to start by sharing a couple of those stories with you. The first one was made by Dates and Mates, and the second by the Helensburgh Community Hub.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Scott.
We met at Dates and Mates.
Yes, Dates and Mates.
One of the events.
We came to Dates and Mates and we've got a good bond, haven't we?
I would describe John as hilarious, unpredictable, and good listener.
I joined Dates and Mates because I wanted to make new friends. Just because I was alone all the time, I just wanted to make new friends.
It's nice just to go and interact with different people and rather than sitting in the house watching rubbish on the television and things like that. So
I'd describe Andrew as funny, got a good sense of humour, and very loyal.
He's a lovely person and you're funny.
You're pretty funny too, John.
And we're all funny by nature.
Yeah.
So you're really talkative and so kind and got a good sense of humour and really polite. And
I feel really privileged to have a friend like Jennifer. The next time I seen you was at the Edinburgh Market on the 4th of December 2014.
I remember that, yeah. We were having a good old gab that day, having a laugh about stuff.
I'm doing new things, I'm going to new places, and I'm meeting new friends as well.
Life's really alone when you don't have friends.
It's not good being alone, you know.
It's good to have someone to listen when you're having ups and downs and always know that they've got your back.
I keep saying to Jennifer, I've never had a friend, Jennifer. She says, "Go, you've got one now."
Everybody who walks through the doors of the hub matters. They might be here to enjoy the company of others in one of the many groups that meet. They might be here to access services that operate from the hub, like Citizens Advice or Rate Crisis. They come from a browse on the Book Nook, which is our volunteer-run second-hand bookshop, or they might be here to put in a shift as one of our volunteers. What matters is that they feel welcome in this space because it's their space, really.
I think the Book Nook, what it offers for the community is a really welcoming space where anyone can come in, they can chat about books, they can chat about local things going on. We notice if they're not here, and I think that's important for some people as well, particularly if they don't have a lot of family or people in their lives. It's nice to be noticed, but I think for a lot of our regular people, they feel part of the community here in the Book Nook.
Key Housing is a third sector organisation. What we do is we support people in the community, mainly adults with learning difficulties. We've been established in the community hub, I think, for approximately 3 years now. It's given ourselves more kind of visibility as well. We strive to ensure that people achieve the best that they can. They've got access to voluntary jobs or paid employment, and just ensure that they're getting an enriched life, basically, and same opportunities as everybody else.
I was referred to the craft group because I was suffering terminal depression, really. Didn't know what to do. Recent bereavement from my wife. And I thought, I've never picked up a needle and thread in my life, but I've loved it. It's turned me round and it's absolutely great. I just concentrate on producing a silly little elephant or a bag or whatever it may be, and it's a meaning to life. It's great. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Two fantastic films showing the work of very different essential sector organisations, and all produced on mobile phones. Just now, I'd like to introduce the two amazing Mojo filmmakers, Jill from Helensburgh Community Hub and Lindsay from Dates and Mates. First of all, can I just ask you, what was your initial reaction to the idea of using your mobile phone to make a film about your work? And what were you hoping to capture on film?
I'll go first. Thanks, Claire. Obviously, apprehension initially, old dog and new tricks, things like that. I was thinking. I mean, I'm a kind of middle-aged woman, and I use my phone quite a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean I was kind of confident at doing the filming. So I found the training that your guys are going to get this morning and that we had in person was really, really helpful for kind of confidence building, and just kind of make me go for it. What I really wanted to capture was the warmth and the ethos of the hub, which kind of was a bit challenging, and I was thinking how I'm going to do that. So that's something that was we talked through as part of the project, and thinking and with the skills that we got, thinking about the different aspects of life at the hub that we could film. So yeah, it was practice, a lot of practice, but it was initially a little bit kind of a little bit scared, if I'm honest.
But you made such a lovely film, and I think you really did capture the warmth of the hub really well. I think people can see that. Lindsay, what about you? What was your initial reaction, and what were you hoping to capture?
I think for me, I'm quite interested in like filmmaking and photography, but on a very, very amateur level, just like out with my role at Dates and Mates. So initially I was quite excited to be doing something a bit more creative in the role, but I think a concern was just like, how is the quality of the footage going to translate in the end? I think that was just something when you hear mobile and film, and then the pressure of trying to capture what your charity is all about, it was a bit like, I just instantly kind of doubting my skills, really. But I could also definitely see the benefit. I think that we, as charities, we're always constantly kind of trying to capture the moment and show the work that we're doing. And I thought, well, I know how powerful filmmaking can be for that. So I think I was like, this could turn out really good, but also a wee bit nervous about what the quality of the work was going to be like. But again, what I wanted to focus on was, I guess, just trying to get the essence of what Dates and Mates is all about, because like so many, I imagine everyone here today, there's so many different things that we do at Dates and Mates, and I think I was just so keen to focus on the essence of the socialising and the friendship. As much as we are a friendship and a dating agency, which is kind of our niche, I thought it was important to really just try and focus on the connections that have been made at Dates and Mates.
Yeah, and I think everybody can see that you really managed to do that so successfully. The people were very engaging, and it was just lovely, the chat between them. And doing them in pairs was a great idea, a lovely creative idea.
That worked out well in the end.
Well, thank you both very much for now. We're going to be hearing a lot more from you shortly, but it's time to get everyone else started, okay? So just to explain, there are 4 parts to this training, and do remember you'll be able to go back and watch it in your own time and pause it and do the exercises, okay? So let's move on to the practical skills. So it'd be really great if you can get your phones out just now so you can check, where the settings are on your phone. Before you go out filming, you need to prepare your phone. First thing to do is make sure you back up your photos and make space on your phone, because interviews, unlike still images, they take up a lot of space. And you certainly don't want to start deleting family photos while you're out in a shoot. Make sure the battery is fully charged. Always really important. You don't want to run out. Always bring a charger with you, and also ideally a battery pack as well. Always handy. And remember also you'll want to have your phone on airplane mode so it doesn't start ringing and popping while you're in the middle of a cracking interview.
Next, you will need to check your phone settings. So first go to camera settings and set video settings to HD, which is 1920 by 1080. Sometimes it's just written up as 1080. New phones can shoot 4K, but you will soon run out of space if you film long interviews. If your phone is Samsung, select 1280 by 720. Then make sure you set up your frame rate as close to 30 frames per second. Here's a tip if you can remember. Film interviews in HD, 1920 by 1080, the smaller format, but then you can film your picture sequences, the B-roll, we'll explain to you what it is later, in 4K. So all those beautiful things that you may be filming, plants, activities, painting, you can zoom in if you need to. Before you start filming, you need to decide if you want your film to be horizontal or vertical. Then stick to that format for the whole of the film. Films for watching on computers, laptops, screening at events should be shot horizontally. And of course, as you know, different online platforms have their own preferred cropping. So you've got square for Instagram, 9:16 portrait mode works on TikTok, Facebook, and Insta Reels.
To make sure your footage has that pro quality, you need to think about how you'll stabilize your camera. So using a tripod is ideal. If you don't have a tripod, though, you can use a piece of furniture or a wall to keep your shot steady. Rest your elbows on a table or a bench, or lean with your shoulders against a wall and hold the phone, close into your body with your elbows tucked in. Most importantly, don't hold your phone out with your arms straight out, out here, because what happens is you'll get tired and your shots will start looking a bit shaky. For the best quality results, think wafer, okay? W is for white balance. Our cameras these days are very clever, and you don't need to worry about this anymore as it's done automatically. If the colors don't look right, then just tap on the screen where you want to focus and it'll sort it. A is for audio. You need to listen to what you can hear around you. Is there a bin lorry reversing nearby? Do we need a microphone to record someone speaking? So think about those things. Then F is for focus and E is for exposure. So we'll show you now how to control and lock the focus and exposure of your subject on your phone. First of all, you want to frame up your shot. Then, to focus on the subject, tap on the eyes. That's where we naturally look when someone's speaking. Then adjust the light or exposure to make the shot darker or brighter by moving the slider. When you're happy, tap and hold to lock both the exposure and the focus. I'll tap on the jug in the background to show you how the focus really works. See, the zebra is now blurry and the jug is in focus. If I move the zebra out of the shot and bring him back in, the shot stays locked on the jug and doesn't automatically jump to the zebra. Whereas if it's not locked, the focus automatically switches when something new appears in the shot. So to control the shot, you need to tell the camera what you want it to focus on and stay focused on throughout the duration of the clip. Once you've shown the camera what to focus on, remember to adjust the exposure if you need to, then tap and hold to lock both. And you're ready to record. And yes, you have to check the focus and exposure every time when you reframe for each individual shot. And the final letter is R, and that's the most important thing to remember: record, okay? You're going to be very upset if you get back and your shots aren't there.
You may have heard framing terms like close-ups, wide shots. It's worthwhile to learn some of these terms if you're filming with your team and need to be able to communicate what you mean quickly. Remember, framing is a conscious decision. What shot size we choose is important. Think about what you want your video to convey. For example, wide shots set the scene, while close-ups show more detail, such as facial expressions or what is happening. And here is a short video on shot sizes.
Okay, so that's shot sizes. The next thing we're going to think about is framing interviews. So the first thing to think about, again, is stability. So again, take time to use a tripod when you're filming. And if you don't have a tripod, remember you can use things like furniture to stabilize yourself. Next, you want to make sure your camera is at the head height of the person. So if your contributor is sitting, you should sit too. If your contributor is taller than you, then stand on something or ask them to sit. This slide shows the editorial effect if you don't keep the camera at head height. So a low angle makes the person look a bit superior as you're kind of looking up to them, while a high angle looking down on the person can make them look a bit less important and a bit inferior. So ensuring your camera is at head height keeps your shot editorially neutral. When filming interviews with a mobile, you want to keep about arm's length between the camera and your subject. So it's actually quite close to the person compared to if you're filming with a big professional camera crew. When it comes to filming interviews, the most common shot is what we call a medium close-up. A medium close-up frames the subject's head and cuts off around mid-chest, a bit like we're all sitting on Zoom at the moment. The focus is on the subject, on the person. It reveals just a little bit about their surroundings and where they are, and it really shows the facial expression of the subject. You also need to check what's known as headroom. Headroom is the space between the subject's head and the top of the frame. Too much headroom will look like the person is sinking in the frame. Not enough headroom or no headroom can cut off the top of the head, or if the head touches the edge of the frame, it's rather unflattering and can be a bit distracting. Professionals go by what's known as the rule of thirds. And you want the eyes to be on the top third line. And most mobiles actually have a setting where you can bring up this grid, and that's a really helpful guide to the framing of your shot.
Another thing to consider while framing is what we call a looking room. In interviews, the subject should be off-center, looking at the interviewer, not the camera, with some exceptions, of course. So you, the director, need to stay close to the camera and keep eye contact to maintain this eye line. The picture on the right, I would say the director could be even a smidge closer to the camera. And you should always leave looking room on the side that the interviewee is facing, plus a little bit of space on the other side. So for example, here looking room is on the wrong side. See how the empty space on the right looks extra empty, whereas the side on the left doesn't. It's just the eye gaze fills that space. And here's what too much looking room looks like. The contributor doesn't look as important being so far on the side. A good way to check you got that right is to have subject's eye roughly on the top third line and then on the right or on the left line. So again, using the rule of thirds. It's all easy to talk, but in practice, when you're out in the real world, you have to think about lots of other things that can make your shot less professional looking. So avoid clutter in the background. Watch out immediately around the head of your interviewees, such as lampposts or plants, and be aware of distracting signs or bins.
The next thing to consider is lighting. Now, good lighting can really improve your shot. So you always want to move your subject to the best light. For example, don't shoot against windows. It's a big no-no. So you don't want the window behind your subject, or what you'll end up with, as you can see here, is a silhouette. Always keep the light to the front or side of your subject. It's a good idea to turn your subject slightly at an incline, about 15 degrees away from the camera, and bring them out from any wall, or so your shot doesn't look all flat. And make sure they're not looking into direct sunlight either, so that ensures they're not going to be squinting in your shot. Weather planning, of course, in Scotland is really essential. As always, watch the weather, especially if you're going to film an event outdoors. Arrange an indoor spot or shelter to do your interviews, for example. And also watch out if it's cloudy, particularly on summer days here. It can, the light can change very quickly in Scotland, and your footage can fluctuate between either being too bright or actually quite dark. So again, here's the short video to summarize all these points. I know some of you have been having some issues with the sound this morning. Again, these will be all available later for you to have a look at if you can't pick up all the sound just now, so don't panic.
This video is about why someone has to have a feeding tube fitted and what happens with it. This video is about why someone has to have a feeding tube fitted and what happens with it.
ari mu cyaro byabaga bigoye kujya gushaka umusuderi i Huye ari mu cyaro byabaga bigoye kujya gushaka umusuderi i Huye.
Well, here in Scotland we can make a difference in terms of the lifestyle choices that we make.
At the same time, we're building up our long-term solutions to these. These are among Scotland's most complex social challenges.
Working as a health visitor with families who are struggling financially is very, very hard. People have no idea of the reality of their situation.
Ariko ngenda mu izina rya company.
Ariko bizinesi yanjye yarakuze kuko aho ngeze nimba nacuruzaga ibiro ubwo wenda n'imbogamizi zitabuze.
Urumva aho imitekerereze biba bitandukanye n'ugiye kumakazi.
Alrighty, folks. Just going to bring back in Jill and Lindsay now to hear more about their experiences with their Essential Sector project. So firstly, what I'd be keen to hear more about is how you found setting up that medium close-up for your interview when you were actually on location. Jill, do you want to go first?
I really struggled with this. I mean, I think everybody watching this will probably look and see an awful lot of quite technical and specific information coming through. So I would say from having done it, don't panic too much because good enough is good enough. And I think I made the film forgetting quite a few of those tips, to be honest with you, and it still came out okay. I mean, I still look at the interview with Jim at the end there, and it kills me every time because I cut off his head. I cut off the top of his head, so I did that wrong. But thankfully, what he was saying was so interesting and so good that you sort of hopefully don't notice it too much. But I found the looking room thing really, really, really tough to get. I was sitting kind of prepping my interviews, jumping back and forth to the seat where they were going to sit about 20 times. And I don't know why that was. I just really struggle with it. So you can just practice putting yourself in the interview seat and then jumping back the other way. Obviously before you're doing your interview, hopefully. The tripod, absolutely essential for doing the interviews. Because we tried practicing when we were doing the training, like trying to hold it steady and do an interview. Impossible to concentrate on both of those things. So a tripod for like 20 quid, really good investment. Same thing with the mic. I tried doing a couple of films without a mic, just using the speaker on the camera and the mic on the camera, and you just couldn't hear. You just couldn't hear what the interview was saying. So I would, again, for fairly cheap, recommend getting a microphone because that makes a huge difference to the sound quality. Yeah, those were the main things that I kind of stuck to. I think, yeah, the framing stuff, that was really interesting, learning about you have to do different shots for the same activity. So you saw Jim, the craft guy, in our little video, and you saw him doing stuff with the sewing, you saw his face, you saw him in different shot sizes, and that's really important to be able to do that, to get that kind of holistic interview. I think that was my takeaways, I think.
For sure. Thanks, Jill. That's great. I'm sure Jim will forgive you for that partial decapitation. And Lindsay, how about yourself? How do you find setting up the shot for the interview?
I actually found the setting up of the shot okay. I found it surprisingly fine. I think for me I had a lot going on in the environment that I chose to do the interviews in. So I think actually the practical side of getting the tripod, getting the shot set up and getting the mics on, I thought, oh, that was quite quick. I think I'm ready to go. And it was more just trying to take everything in. So background noise was definitely an issue for us because we decided to film in the settings, so at our events. So that could be like in a pub or during a drama class because I really wanted to have the sort of authenticity of just right in the heart of the events at Dates and Mates. But obviously with that comes background noise and maybe not the most flattering lighting a lot of the time. So I chose to kind of take that risk just because I thought that I would get the best out of the interviewees in a natural setting rather than maybe in a space where the lighting is a bit better, but it maybe feels a wee bit more contrived. So, but I would say the setting up was fine. I think once you've done it a few times, and you just do the test shots like Jill was saying, I think you're kind of foolproof in a way of I'm going to get the interview, and then it's just everything else to take on board. Oh, siren going by, my bad audio in the background. But I would say that, yeah, trying to look at the person that you're interviewing and make sure you're recording is quite a multitask as well. There's making sure you're not ignoring them so that you're fixated on the camera, but also just giving it the little glance from time to time, especially if the content of what you're getting is really good in the interview.
You've really kind of ticked off most of my questions in that one answer, folks. So yeah, kudos to you all. But yeah, I'm glad that training came in pretty useful for that. So yeah, I'll hand back to Claire just now to crack on.
Excellent. Thanks very much, James, Lindsay, and Jill. Now it's time to turn our attention to interview techniques. So when you're interviewing someone, remember that you are really the bridge between the subject and the viewer. So basically, you want to ask the questions that the viewer would want to ask if they were the ones that were speaking to that person. First of all, some do's and don'ts, okay? So do use open questions, nice open questions, the 5 W's that you probably learned at primary school: who, what, where, why, when, and how. Also add how. How's a good one? How much difference do things make? Progress logically and ask one question at a time. Don't be tempted to use multiple questions. And basically keep your questions simple and clear and avoid any jargon. A few don'ts. Don't ask yes or no questions such as do you, will you, have you, etc. Because what you can end up, particularly if somebody is is nervous, is one word answers such as yes and no, and that's not what you want. And don't ramble. So keep questions short and to the point. Ideally, you want to plan your questions in advance. Do as much homework and research the story and the person and find out as much as you can ideally before you go on the shoot. It's not always possible, but if you can, do it beforehand. Think about the order you want to ask your questions in and try not to jump around too much. So you want to start with an introduction, who they are, and then ask them about what's happening, and then get on to things like why it's important. Don't give your contributor a list of questions in advance, or they will over-rehearse and it will sound pretty unnatural. But you should think in advance of what your ideal answer would be, your angle for the story, if you like. And that way you can pick up if something's missing during the interview. You never want to put words directly into the person's mouth, but what you can do, particularly, if somebody's nervous or whatever, is you can help and guide them with what they want to say. The most important thing, though, to do when you're conducting an interview is, and it sounds very simple, but it is so important, is to listen. You wouldn't want to talk to someone hiding behind a phone or looking down at their notes. So it's really important to keep good eye contact with your contributor. And you can encourage them by nodding, but don't say yes out loud or make noises like because that can get very distracting and hard to edit out. When they're done, ask your next question. But that could be different from what you'd actually planned in advance if they talk about something you hadn't expected and you want to follow that up. So, you know, it is a natural conversation. So remember, be friendly. You know, chatting to your interviewee beforehand, you know, actually about something, you know, how busy they've been today or something like that. How was the traffic? That helps put them at ease, because they may well be nervous going on camera. Remind people that the film will only be short, and you may need to ask the same questions twice, for example, if their answer is just a bit too long. Always make sure you get their name and title on video at the beginning, as well as on paper, including the correct spelling, as you will need that for the captions later. And if your notebook goes astray, if you've got it on film, then you've got the correct name and title and you can identify everyone. It's a good idea to ask interviewees to repeat your question in their answer. So I would say, for example, when I ask you what you did have, what did you have for breakfast? Don't say eggs. Instead, encourage them to say, oh, for breakfast this morning, I had eggs. So you get that nice full answer, and the question that you put is encompassed in that answer. Remember, if it's a particularly emotional or sensitive interview, then simply let the person speak in their own way, in their own time. Don't bombard them with questions, you know, just let it flow. If your interviewee doesn't answer the question, you can actually, you know, rephrase the question and try again in a slightly different way. Never say to your contributor, that was bad or too long. Always remember to keep it positive. Tell them, that was great. I really liked the bit you said about, you know, whatever. Can you repeat that and summarize it a little bit if you can? You know, that would be great. So those are some of the tips so you can make sure you get great answers. Now I'm going to hand back over to James, Jill, and Lindsay.
Just a couple more questions about the interviewing. So Jill, firstly, you provide quite a range of services at the hub. So naturally you were interviewing quite a spread of people. Like how did you find that?
That was definitely my biggest challenge when we were thinking about what to do. So I put quite a lot of thought about that into that before I even kind of asked anybody. So I spent quite a lot of time thinking about all the different things the hub does, and then trying to see if there's a way of grouping stuff together and I could kind of capture, as I said at the beginning, kind of some of the ethos really, rather than the specific actual activities. I was really trying to capture the sense of the place. So I realized very quickly I wasn't going to be able to show everything that happened. And I just had to kind of pick a couple of things that I thought might look quite good on film, like the yoga, for example, because that's quite movement in it. It was, you know, I think one of the things that can work quite well making films for our kinds of organizations in our sector is we're interviewing people that we already know and we already have kind of trusted relationships with, and most of us will have, you know, some good characters already that we're working with. I mean, Jim on our video was just great, and I knew from the start that he was going to be one of my first kind of asks, and thankfully he said yes. But I think that's going to help all of us with our filmmaking, is that we are making films about and with people that we already know. So I think I just had to be accepting that I wasn't going to be able to show everything, and just had to think about things that might visually kind of work and give a sense of the place.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, you need to give yourself something more for a sequel as well, Jill. And Lindsay, like, how about yourself? You pose yourself quite a challenge interviewing, you know, pairs of service users at a time. You know, what challenges did that bring about, and what kind of tips do you have for anyone who might be thinking of using that same style?
Yeah, I think I was just really keen to as I was saying, capture the members of Dates and Mates in a natural setting. And a big part of our events is socialising and chatting with each other. So that was kind of my thinking behind filming in pairs, to just kind of show some of the friendships that's been built naturally just at Dates and Mates. Challenge with that, just on a technical level, was how do I get two people mic'd up with the audio coming to my phone? Surprisingly okay. You can just buy like a little adapter thing that you plug in your phone, and then the two lav mics can just go into that. So that was actually okay, and the length as well of the wire was far enough away. I had an image of them like getting tangled in the wires and stuff. It was fine. Probably challenge would be just being aware that maybe if they're getting quite into one of the answers, there's a risk of talking over each other at points. So just being aware of making sure that both of the interviewees have had their time to have their say as well. If there's maybe one person that's maybe dominating the conversation a wee bit, just don't be afraid to be like, and specifically, can I ask you about this? This is your moment. And I think positioning as well was a wee bit tricky, just with having two people in the shots. And obviously I was so aware of having the angle and the distance, but what I found was, obviously if you're sitting next to someone who is your friend, you're going to naturally kind of face them and talk to them. Again, I kind of just thought, keep the quality of what they're talking about as the focus, rather than being like, can you say that again? But don't look at each other, you know. So kind of probably getting the balance of the quality of all of the techniques, but also if there's two people, allowing maybe a wee bit of room for what would be natural.
Lindsay, thank you. Yeah, I think it worked really well. It's great, those moments that you captured. It's very charming, you know, capture the rapport between everyone. So thanks for that. And Velta, back to yourself.
Thank you. And on to the topic that Lindsay just touched, which is how to record audio well. Audio is extremely important. Viewers can forgive bad pictures, but they will never sit through something with bad sound. Audio is especially important for interviews. We need to be able to hear what your contributor is saying. The first thing is to choose the right microphone. If you're filming inside, use a lavalier mic, also known as a tie clip or clip-on mic or just lav. Remember to hide the cable. This presenter should have tucked the cable under her shirt or jacket. If you're filming outside, use a shotgun directional microphone, which plugs into your camera or smartphone. Or if you don't have an external microphone, choose a quiet location for your interview, and you will then use the microphone that's built in on your phone. Here are some examples of lav and shotgun microphones. In the Mojo handouts online, there will be links with some tips on how to pick the right one for you. Reminder, stuff online changes all the time, but you will know the terminology that you can search for and will help you to choose what to buy. If you are filming outside, be prepared for wind and work with it. Some mics have what are called fluffy cats or dead hamsters. You can improvise and use your own sock or scarf to wrap up the microphone with, or you can use your own body to shield the microphone by standing with your back to the wind, and that way protecting the microphone. If you can, always wear headphones so you can monitor audio while recording. Listen out for distracting noises. This can be in the background, traffic, construction, dance party next door, or there can be interference with the microphone from jewelry, shirt, collars, the cable itself, or, you know, someone fidgeting with their hands. One way to make sure your film looks more professional is to hide the microphone. With a shotgun microphone, make sure it's just out of shot. The dead cat fluff is not in the shot. With a lavalier mic, get creative. You can tape it under the collar, tuck it into the inside of a blouse or between shirt buttons. But it's better to have the mic in the shot than to have bad sound. And finally, always check your recording. After you film the person introducing themselves, watch the clip back. It'd be worse to repeat the whole interview from the beginning than just the one question. When you're finished with the interview, before you let the contributor leave, again, play the recording back to make sure you have, one, indeed press the record button, and do some spot checking to ensure that the audio is fine throughout.
Okay, now it's time to do a short practical exercise. Those of you who have a colleague or a family member, a friend in the room, or in the house, or the flat, or the office, or whatever, what we want you to do is write 3 simple questions to ask them. Then set up an interview shot, a medium close-up. Do your wafer checks, white balance, audio, focus, exposure, and then record the person answering your questions, okay? And remember to listen. When you're finished, play it back and ask yourself, was the framing the best it could be? Check the background, check the lighting, check the eye line, etc. Ask yourself, can I hear the person clearly? Do they answer the questions fully? And think about any follow-up questions you could ask. For those of you who don't have another person with you in the room, what we want you to do is practice interview planning. So write down 3 questions you would ask someone who works for an organization and is running an event for service users. Then write down 3 questions to ask service users and or their families of service users attending the event. After you've written the questions, write down what you hope they would say. And then lastly, write down where you could interview your contributors and what potential issues you might face, challenges on location, for example, sound or light, etc., etc. Okay? So you've got 10 minutes for this exercise, and as well as doing the exercise, do use this time to have a comfort break if you need to, okay? And top up your tea and coffee.
Now, James, you've provided a lot of technical and creative support to Mojo filmmakers over the year. Let's chat about some of the most common challenges people faced. So we talked about interviews. So what are the best questions to ask?
I think it is just important just to kind of keep things as simple as possible, let the interviewee do, all the heavy lifting because, they're there to hear from them, so just, name and job title, that kind of thing. And then, tell me what your organization does and, like who's it for, and then what impact your organization has on, your service users, your community, things like this. And then, if you're talking to, say, a volunteer, like the CEO or manager, what do you enjoy most about, working for this organization? Or, if it's a service user, client of your organization, you could say, why do you enjoy coming to this group or getting involved in these activities, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Sometimes interviewees give short answers or don't answer in full sentences. What can you do? What a director can do?
I think it's just important just to be, patient and sympathetic, because it's not natural being in front of camera, some people do find it very tricky, so yeah, just give them time and space and just be there for them, never say that they're doing anything wrong, positive encouragement does go a long way. So just kind of reinforcing they're doing well and, thank them for what they've said already, this is great, but maybe can you shed more light on this if I ask you this question again? That was great, but, remember someone watching this film might not know anything about your organization. So, how would you say it to someone who's never heard of you before, kind of thing,
people notice that often after the filming, the framing is not great. It's too in the middle or too far on the side. How can you avoid that?
Just tests, you know. I think what you were mentioning before, you know, you just do a test question, you know, you ask them, your interviewee, you know, their name and their job title, you know, what they had for breakfast, and, you know, just take a minute to review that, you know, check for framing, check that the audio is good, check there's nothing going on in the background, you know, anything kind of strange that might just distract your eye as the viewer. And that as well just gives the interviewee just a moment to just kind of decompress, you know, and just de-stress, and before you start, you know, in earnest and follow on with the interview.
And what about recording clean sound?
Yeah, again, you know, in that test, you know, just listen back, you know, before doing the whole interview, you know, that's key, you know. You know, it's okay to have like a bit of kind of noise like in the background, you know, if you can see it, you know, if you're in like a busy kind of conference room or event space or like a playground, you know, your eye can see that there's people in the background making that noise, you know, it's contextualized. But I mean, places are very noisy, you know, and you might just want to move location so you can get that good kind of clean sound, you know. So there might be like a meeting room next door that you can, that's vacant, that you can shimmy into, you know. It might not be as pretty as the shot that you had in mind, but, you know, I think, you know, it's really important to get that clean audio to use as the kind of the bedrock of your film, you know. So, and you can always go out and shoot pretty B-roll afterwards, you know, so gives you that option.
So what about planning these shoots? What should people be mindful of?
I think biggest thing is just access to contributors, you know, and interviewees. You know, for instance, with the Essential Sector project, we started that just before the summer holidays, and that proved tricky for a lot of the organisations that we're working with, for access to people. You know, people were away on holiday and whatnot. You know, so that did delay things quite a bit. And you know, planning everything is vital, because, you know, you need to appreciate that, you know, you have your own work that you're doing as well, your own life, as well as doing this film, you know, and that of others, you know. So, you know, give people plenty of time to make arrangements, and yourself to make arrangements to film. And as soon as you know when, you know, you've got a window, you know, lock that in and start speaking to your contributors, you know, so it's, you know, it's marked out and you've got enough time.
People often ask, how many people should I film for, let's say, a 2-minute video?
I mean, it does really depend on the story that you're wanting to tell, you know. You might get one amazing speaker, you know, who just tells you the entire story of your organization in a couple of minutes, you know. But, you know, you maybe want to bring a little bit more kind of visual variety, you know, to the film, you know. So you might want to bring in 2 or 3 people to the film, you know, to give your viewer just like a little bit more kind of visual interest, so you can kind of cut between them, you know. So, and as well, like, it kind of gives you a spread of, you know, different genders, ages, you know, like status within the organization, you know. And, you know, throwing in a couple of like quick vox pops, you know, like you see in the news when they're standing on Buchanan Street, you know, what do you think of the economy? And you're interviewing, you know, Joe Public, you know, just those little sound bites from service users can really kind of add a few more kind of perspectives to the film as well.
Thank you for giving lots of good tips and putting in the context.
Now you know how to film an interview well, and that is a huge part of making a film. But films consist of much, much more than words. You know, sure, you can have a film entirely put together from what we would call talking heads, with only short clips or sound bites from interviews. But what you really want to do is tell the story in pictures. Film is an audio-visual medium, so what you show is just as important as what you say. You know, they say a picture tells 1,000 words. And, you know, if you add a smile into that, then it's even more powerful. You can think about it as pictures show and interviews tell. So pictures are also very good at showing emotions, which when filming stories of third sector organisations is particularly important. You always want to think ahead about what your opening shot might be. You know, it's the first image people will see to click online to watch it. So it really has to grab attention and hook the viewer and draw them into the story. Also, we don't just want a random collection of pictures. We want to film particular types of shots to capture different aspects of the story. The shots are then edited together into what we call picture sequences or visual sequences. And these, you know, sometimes they're referred to as picture sequences, sometimes people call it B-roll, I've heard that phrase. Also another phrase is GVs, which stands for general views. And the aim is to use them to tell a visual narrative, okay? So what we're going to do is watch another film made as part of the Essential Sector campaign. And this time when you're watching the film, we want you to look at it really analytically and see what's being shown and not just what's being said and told. Okay, so think about the shot sizes and what the pictures are telling us, and as well as the interviews. Okay, so enjoy.
AfroScot Relief Project was inspired by the desire to promote African health, mental health, and celebrate the rich cultural heritage of Africa. We believe promoting wellness and cultural understanding is essential to building a vibrant and sustainable African community in Scotland.
One thing about Africa is that we've got a rich culture, and every of this culture tells a story. These are the two queens. This is the Oba. They call it king, like in English, so in Benin it's called Oba of Benin. This is a typical Maasai man from the region of East Africa, precisely Kenya and Tanzania.
I've been in Glasgow 8 years. I've only met somebody from my tribe once. Yeah, so we are that rare.
Africa as a land of colors.
And the word says, "Ujua mtu ni tabia yake." If you really need to know someone, you know them by their actions.
We have also helped foster greater understanding and respect among people of different cultures, and have contributed to building a stronger and more vibrant Scottish society. And these are the things that key me into it, and I'm so glad to be part of the helping hand at AfroScot Relief Project.
We appreciate everyone who is here today. If not for you, there will be no AfroScot Relief Project. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Okay, so you see there how you can really show people what's happening and show what your organisation's about as much as tell. So I'm going to pass back to Vilta now.
Right, so now let's look at how to tell your story through those 5 shot sequences. First of all, we have a close-up of hands. It's what are they doing? Starting with this, shot intrigues the viewer. We know what's being done, but we start to wonder who is doing it, where and why. Next, we have a close-up of face. Who's doing it? Always keep in mind your framing. And then you get a wide shot. Time to set the scene. Where are they doing it? What's going on in the background? In the previous film, we saw that there's lots of people in the park. Or is it important that the person is alone? Always remember your framing. Then we have an over-the-shoulder shot, sometimes referred to as OTS as an acronym. What does the subject see? This shot is framed just from behind the subject, so we see some of their head and shoulders, but we're mainly looking at what they're looking at. And again, it just gives that sort of sense of perspective and helps us to put ourselves in their shoes. And the fifth shot is a shot of your choice. So once you know you've got your four main shots, you can construct a story from them. With the fifth one, you can get a little bit more creative and and find an alternative shot. This could be a low angle, high angle, an extreme close-up of another detail, or something else entirely, like a tracking shot, moving, panning, tilting. Think about what else the viewer might want to know or feel. Another really important thing to remember is that video is not a photograph. You need to film all your B-roll or TVs or picture sequences. All those shots need to be at least 10 seconds. You don't know how much footage your editor or you will need when you're editing, so make sure you have that extra. And 10 seconds, I promise, can feel a little bit unnaturally long, but start it as a habit and just count it, or you can even see it on the clip on your phone saying like when the countdown is happening. Okay, so here are some examples of visuals. This is a sporty one. You can see how much you can tell through images without any even interviewing or any dialogue at all. It's quite interesting watching films with no audio, isn't it? So, quick summary. Film is all about pictures. One easy way to tell a visual story is to use 5-shot sequence. Hands, face, your wide shot, over the shoulder, and your choice.
So now it's your turn to put what you've learned into practice with a second exercise, okay? So if you have another person with you in the room, we want you to film a 5-shot sequence with them perhaps writing on a notepad or typing on a laptop or anything else that it is you can get creative, anything else at hand. When you're finished, play it back and ask yourself, is the framing as good as it could be? Are all the shots clean with no clutter in the background? Are all the shots clearly different in shot sizes? And also ask, if I had to keep only 2 shots, what shots would tell the story best? Okay. For those of you who don't have another person to practice with, pick an object. It might be a plant or a book or something like that, whatever you have to hand, and try and film at least 4 shots in different shot sizes and different angles, such as you might try an extreme close-up, a medium or mid shot, a wide shot showing where the thing is, maybe a high angle or a low angle, experiment. But remember to check the exposure and make sure your picture's in focus, and remember to hold each shot for 10 seconds, okay? So you've got 10 minutes. Just a wee note before we move on about 5-shot sequences. You may, in the final film, you might not use all 5 shots that you've got, but whether it's you editing or you have an editor working for you, you will be so pleased if you have a choice of shots to use in the edit, and it really makes such a difference. So do always remember everything you want a 5-shot sequence for. Now I'm going to pass over to James, Lindsay and Jill to start our final Q&A session. Over to you.
Yeah, so this is the final question for Jill and Lindsay today, before we start taking the questions that you've been posting throughout the session. So yeah, maybe Jill, do you want to take us away with this first? What do you find the most challenging about filming picture sequences?
I think remembering all the different technical elements to them. As I've been reminded today, I realised I'd forgotten quite a few of the technical elements to doing filming. But hopefully, the film that we made shows that, you know, good enough is good enough sometimes. So I think not to be frightened of just doing it. And sometimes capturing the moment because it feels right. You know, there's something going on that you want to capture. So just sort of going for it a little bit and remembering some of the very basic stuff. For me, felt that the different using the different shot sizes. That stuck really well, and I think that's really useful. I was less good in some of the other technical stuff like the lighting and you know, checking my phone, you know, the balance of focusing and things like that. So I think just practicing doing it. Definitely got much more comfortable. I felt initially a little bit apprehensive. Obviously, you know, you've asked somebody they're going to do the interview, sat down, you've prepped it, I've spent about half an hour jumping from seat to seat to make sure I've got the looking room thing right, because I just couldn't get that. And then I think just doing it felt, you know, doing it over and over and over and doing quite, you know, I filmed a couple more interviews actually than made the final version, but just doing the practicing and getting over that fear of asking someone to sit in front of a camera, because you're very you know, you're very aware that somebody's going to be sitting there, they might be talking quite emotionally about things that feel quite deep and you know, they could be upsetting or they could be joyful, but they're quite emotional, and so not being put off by that, knowing that the reason that you're doing this is to help more people like the people that are in the film, and people do generally want to be part of that. So overcoming, you know, a bit of apprehension about putting people in front of a camera and making the film, doing the actual interviewing, and just practicing it, you know, you get more comfortable with it, I think.
Great. And Lindsay, how about yourself? How did you find it filming picture sequences? Do you find anything challenging or, you know, hard to remember?
I think for us, something that I found quite challenging was trying to capture candid footage. I think we're so used to doing like social media posts and the big thumbs up and over here and everyone's smile. So I think it was probably for our members a bit confusing that I was saying, don't look at the camera and just do what you were doing. So I think trying to capture candid footage when you're so used to just going straight for like a very obvious shot, I found a wee bit tricky. And I think probably just in general filming with intention as well. Like I think that we're so used to the sort of quick fix of just getting the footage and posting it on our social media pages to show where we are. So I think having that moment to just pause and think, right, what is the actual story that we want to show here was really beneficial. Technically, I think just like what Jill was saying, I think in the moment it was hard to remember things like the focus and the white balance, and particularly with the B-roll footage, I found I don't know again if it was maybe just the locations, because we were tended to be in very kind of busy environments with loud music and things like that, that I found it quite hard to just get a kind of still good shot. A lot of my B-roll footage was probably unusable because I was getting a bit carried away in the atmosphere of the event. So I would say, but again, I think as long as you get loads of it, it's fine. Like as long just get more than you know that you're going to need, so that you at least have a few shots. that can be used.
And not being afraid to sort of get close to people as well, you know, doing like the over the shoulder stuff and the hands stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I think it was practicing that and just doing it. And I've done probably like 25 people's hands, and maybe like three of them made it into the film, but because you have to get into their personal space a little bit. So again, just going for it and making a bit of a joke about it and having a bit of a laugh about it, I think kind of helps. You just need to go for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just to kind of take the edge off it, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for those points, folks. That's very pertinent information, I think, for everyone today. And I think, you know, just to kind of jump off the back of some of those points as well, and just to kind of reiterate for everyone, you know, some of the points we've gone over today, you know, just for B-roll, it is, you know, kind of awkward to stand there for 10 seconds, especially if it is with someone, you know, and you're in their personal space. But, you know, 10 seconds is a key amount, you know, even or you know, of a kettle, or you know, the record spinning, or of a plant, you know, that's kind of easier to get 10 seconds of, but you know, 10 seconds with people is key as well. And I think when it comes to maybe like your kind of like your ratio of, you know, of shooting, I would say, you know, if you've done your interview first, say, and someone's mentioned, you know, what they do in their organization, you know, like who they offer their services to, you know, if you get at least one picture sequence of each one of those key messages, then you will find the edit much easier to put together. And as you were saying, Lindsay, as well, you know, it is better to shoot too much than too little, you know, because, you know, when you get into like your editing chair and you've got this huge bit of footage to choose from, then, you know, your options are more open. So yeah, don't feel afraid to, you know, film more than you think is necessary, I would say. And I think, you know, for like a kind of 2 to 3 minute film, you know, a minimum of 3 kind of picture sequences would be what I would say. And then, you know, but 5, you know, or more would be better, especially, you know, when you've got your editing hat on. And maybe for like a minute, I'd say maybe like 2 picture sequences would suffice, you know. Because I mean, you know, you can tell a film just, you know, talking head, direct to camera kind of thing, you know. But you know, you are trying to tell a visual story, you know. So how do you kind of how do you put the visuals to that, you know, to create the biggest impact with your audience, you know, to tell your story visually as well. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, for about 20 to 30 minutes, I'd say, of footage for like a 1 to 2 minute film. And I think that was probably, with yourselves, Jill and Lindsay, that's probably about how much you filmed, you know, and there's plenty to choose from for both of your films, you know, when we were editing, you know. So I'd say that was probably a good amount to film.
I need to do a wee bit of explaining to some of the people who didn't make the final cut. I'm going to have to make another film to include the people who didn't get in.
Yeah, that's a hard conversation to have. Okay, so that's all from us. So I'll pass back on to Claire for some more questions from our viewers.
Okay, if we could have the whole panel up, that would be helpful. If we can see everybody, and we can bounce the questions to different people. So there's a couple of questions. First of all, on the cost of kit. You know, there's a question here from Kirsty. Do you know any grants to help buy this kind of kit? I'm going to ping that one to Anne, I think, possibly, I don't know if she might be able to answer that. But before that, there's also another question. Is less equipment possible? We don't have much budget, especially if the video is less interview based. We're hoping to make a venue walkthrough video and that question's from Anna. And the answer is yes. You know, I go out with, you know, that is my Mojo kit. I have that in my bag. And there are various things, like I have a little shotgun mic, I have a little lav mic, oops, if you can see that. And I have a thing for the shoulder pod and a little tripod and 1 or 2 elements like that, a few other bits and pieces. And it doesn't cost an awful lot. However, on the odd occasion I do go out without that, I can still use just the phone. And still get, obviously, if you're doing interviews, it's harder to get good audio because the microphones on mobile phones aren't that great. But yeah, absolutely. You can still capture an awful lot of good stuff with no accessories whatsoever. But it makes the job a lot easier if you do have a few bits and pieces that don't cost an awful lot.
I would really recommend you to make friends with other third sector organizations, such as Civio Events. If you buy this kit, how often are you going to use it? Most likely there are people out there who already have this kit.
Okay. And Jill,
that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. We've got a photography club that meets in the hub. So guess who? I asked for tripods, and I got a couple of tripods from them. So I think there's somebody somewhere that will have bits of kit that you can borrow, because you don't necessarily need it for ever and ever. You just need it for a few weeks, couple of weeks, months, something like that, maybe. And that's how we did it.
I suspect it would be quite difficult to come by money for your individual organisation or project, and I think the ideas you've been given there are fantastic, but I'm quite happy to take that away and do a little bit of homework as well. So when we share the Q&A sheet back with you, anything that I find in my homework we'll pop in there. But just what Claire was saying at the start there about the reason that we wanted to run this session anyway was because we wanted to make this as accessible as possible for people. And the idea of starting with what you've got is just perfect, and then build from there and work with others. But yeah, I'll try and find out what I can.
There's an interesting question from Andy saying, how long is a good length of video for a website? So who wants to take that one?
Of course, you want to tell quite a lot about your organization, who you are, completely understandable, but really think about how long are people willing to watch your film? So we say 1 to 3 minutes as an optimum video to watch on a website. If you're talking about social media, it's probably even under 2 minutes would be best. If you have more things to explain, maybe make different videos for different topics. So on the website, you would have different themes, so people can then choose which clip to watch. Whereas if you go on the website and say there's a 10-minute video and people don't know if they will get the answers they need, they may just not even click it because they say, thinking, oh, I'm only watching this at my lunchtime, I'm not going to watch a 10-minute video. Whereas you have shorter ones and they say exactly what they're going to tell you there, they're more likely to watch it.
Thanks very much, Filter. There are some questions here about permission and consent. How do you go about getting consent from people if you are, for example, filming at a location where there are multiple people? Would verbal consent be enough, or would you need written consent? And somebody else has also said, that was Sophie, and Mary has said, what about permission? If it's a public space, there might be other people in the background, like the one in the park. What should we do there?
Yeah, consent can be a bit of a minefield of a topic to go over. And yeah, I have asked quite a lot of film bodies about this for guidance in the past. And I think as long as you're covered, like if you're arranging an event, say, if you put in like a disclaimer in like the event invite that there will be video and photography at this event, but please let us know if you don't want to be featured in anything, and we'll try and erase you. That it's tricky when it's like a huge kind of wide shot saying there's lots and lots of people, but generally the rule of thumb is that no one is the focus of that image if it's a wide shot. So it's the problems arise maybe when you're kind of having like a close-up of someone, but I think in that regard, then, verbal consent would be fine. And I think with interviews, say, if you just have your consent form to say where this film will be used, online, social media, YouTube, you need to let people know if there's ever like a chance that might end up in like local press or national press as well, because that can change people's permissions as well for the footage. So yeah, just be as clear as possible with people, and yeah, just bring along a stack of consent forms whenever you're doing any filming, in case you are doing any kind of interviewing.
Aidan is looking for advice on where to get free music with no license required. And Lisa's also asking, can Canva be used to add music to video once it has been downloaded?
So the answer is yes, all music on Canva is royalty free. That means that Canva already bought the music from the artist and they've been paid, so you can use it. If you're looking for music elsewhere, search for royalty-free music. Things like pixabay.com will come up, freestockmusic.com, freemusicarchive.org. Then after you've picked your track, also check what the rules are for using that particular track. You may have to give a credit to the musician at the end of the film on screen, Or sometimes you may even have to add a link to the artist in the text copy underneath your video on YouTube. So check what's the next step of how you need to credit the musician.
Thank you for that, Vilda. Andy's asking, is it better to use less shots rather than speed up video if for reels?
So sped up footage, otherwise called time-lapse shots, are generally used to visualize passing of time or an overview. Let's say it's an event and you're just like, going through crowds of people, or you're showing a progress of something being made over time. So you can get a good impression of, oh, loads of people came here, or look, this is how long it takes to make this thing, or things like that. They don't really tell a story as what we were talking about of who is doing, what are they doing, where are they doing. So it's always better to have the 5 shots to tell your story, then decide if time lapse is something you need in addition. They are nice. It's a very contemporary way of telling a story. It's a very dynamic thing. So I wouldn't say don't use time lapse. It's really good fun and a creative way, but it's an addition to telling a narrative and making a film accessible as much as possible.
There's an interesting question about social media here from Philippa. If you will be showing the video on social media, Instagram stories, for example, as well as on YouTube, is it better to film in landscape or portrait? I don't know whether Lindsay and Jill, you used I can't remember which channels you used for putting your films on social media, but we obviously, our main focus was to teach you to film in landscape for the most part, unless you're specifically doing a campaign on Instagram or TikTok or something.
I did everything in landscape because on the basis of walking before I can run, just doing something that was probably useful in more platforms, on the website, on YouTube, and then you can provide the link to it in other platforms. On our Facebook page, I keep on every now and then I'll repost a post with a link to the film, with some kind of relevance to that day or whatever. But I definitely felt that it was about just learn the basics first, and then maybe in the future when I do more, we'll play around a little bit. But sorry, I should say I did forget one time, and I started filming something portrait, and then I realized how it just wasn't going to fit together with something else, the other stuff that I'd done. So keeping it all the same was a very good point that you'd made earlier on in the training.
If you know your video is going to be on both on phones as well as YouTube, it is better still to film landscape, because if you film everything vertically, you end up with these black bars on the sides. Whereas if you film horizontally and then you upload it to, let's say, Instagram Reel or something, people can just flip their phone and you fill the screen with visual, whereas you can't do it the other way around. You can't sort of reflip it from vertical to horizontal.
A quick, simple question here. For the 10-second shots of each of the 5 shots in the sequence, would you film them as separate videos or use the pause button between each shot? And that's from Sharon. I would advise do them as separate shots. You can use them as pause, much easier to work with in the edit if they're all separate shots. So that's a quick one to answer. How long approximately did it take to edit and put together the finished videos, just for an idea of how much time I need to set aside to create a similar video of a similar project?
Yeah, I mean, you can spend a long time editing, I think that maybe that is like the key kind of point here, is never underestimate how long it can take to edit, because, time lens perspective in the case that, say, Jill sent me in the footage on, Monday morning, you could maybe have like a rough cut from that footage by the afternoon, but, you need to step away from that and, see if it all, and then, come back to it after lunch and see if it all kind of works, or, you sleep on it. So, depending on how much footage you get, you can turn things around pretty quickly, but yeah, just make sure you've got enough time to let other people see it and give feedback and comments and things, and just make sure that all the messages are kind of hitting where you want them to hit, kind of thing, you know. So, but yeah, Vilta, maybe you want to add to this as well.
Just little notes. I think when we were talking about preparation is key. So if you really thought about what am I filming? What are the key questions to ask? So whoever is editing it, if you have the vision what films needs to be, that makes the editing so much faster. If you're just still learning the editing software itself, don't give yourself a hard time. The first few films will take a little bit of time, and promise you it will get much, much faster.
Yeah, thanks, James and Vilta. And when you do get more experienced, if you get into this and you realize how powerful a tool having your mobile phone with you all the time is, then you can actually go to events and actually you can turn something around very quickly using software on your apps on your phone, and you can actually have pieces going out on social media while the event's still going on. The key to that is to keep them fairly simple and don't make them overcomplicated, but it can be a really excellent thing to do.
Sorry to stop things there, because there are quite a few more questions, particularly about things like software recommendations and a few other things too. So it's just to say to you, any of the questions you've put forward, we have captured them all, and we will get back to you with a Q&A after this. We'll repeat the answers to the questions that we've been asked live as well, just so that you've got those written down too. But wow, that was a whistle-stop tour of how to make a film on your mobile phone. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Claire, Vilta, James, Lindsay and Jill. That was absolutely fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly were very excited about bringing you the session today. So just huge thank you to the speakers, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.